The show is still the Eastern Business Report on the Afia Business Morning. I'm Nnamdi Obanya. Yesterday we talked about managing sportsmen and women, and today we are continuing the conversation but talking about the business of football in the Southeast and South-South. Now, these regions have a rich history with national and continental champions like Rangers and Enyimba, iconic clubs like Insurance of Benin, which was formerly Bendel Insurance, Heartland in its former incarnation as in Wanyawu National. There is still Calabar Rovers, Gabros International, and more recently we've had Rivers United, Warri Wolves, Akwa United, and so many more. The region has also produced many of Nigeria's legends, from the late legends Christian Chukwu and Stephen Keshi to Sunday Olise, Samson Siasia, JJ Okocha, Kanu Wankwo, Emmanuel Amunike, Uche Okechukwu, and more recently Alex Iwobi, Victor Osimhen, Wilfred Ndidi, and more. So with this rich pedigree, why do we not have stability or infrastructure or a vibrant regional footballing industry? Why are these two regions not overtly dominating national and continental football? And to help us answer these questions is Afia Sports Desk Head and part-time rabbi, Ceecee Emechebe. I'll be talking about the business in the region. Good morning, Ceecee.
Good morning.
Let me start from here. It almost seems as if you can take a 23-man squad to a major tournament of only players from Southeast and South-South.
True.
They have been dominant, at national team level. And if we look at clubs, yes, people mention stationary stores, shooting stars, but if I'm correct, nationally on the continent, Rangers and Enyimba are probably the most successful clubs. Canopilas may have had their long domestic run, but they have no continental, shield to back it. So why is it that this region does not have the richest, most stable clubs with the best stadia?
Well, thanks for having me once again. It's really funny and interesting how we're having a sequence, in terms of discussions in this matter, because of the rot that we're seeing in sports generally, and the Southeast in particular, the southern region actually, but the Southeast, major focus on the Southeast because that's where we are. There are many factors that are involved here. While you were just talking about that, something was coming to mind about the full cycle, as it were, of sports, of an approach towards sports. There was a time far back, many years ago, when sports was not seen as profitable. It was just leisure. People loved it. That was when we were growing up, people, young boys and even young girls who at that stage will be involved in sports for leisure, and then the parents will scold them and say, do something useful in your life, this and that, and just for the love of the game, like what Pele, the late Edson Arantes do Nascimento, will call it Jogo Bonita, the beautiful game. So because of the beauty of the game, just isolating football now, because of the beauty of the game, people fell in love with that and just played football, not even knowing that there was something to be gained from it economically. But as still on that cycle, eventually people started seeing the viability of the sports sector, the profitability, how endorsement and marketing rights and all these different things will come in. Clubs started becoming more robust economically, and then we were making signings. People were coming from different parts of the world just to identify with what was building up a very large fan base. And you can see, like you look at many of the clubs in world football, their fan base has increased astronomically over the years. And that just shows you how much potential is in sports. So then people started making money. Was now moving from sports for the love of sports to a major cash cow, so to speak. But now there seems to be a decline because of that same thing we've been talking about for a while, priorities or lack thereof. There are many factors that are responsible for the decline in sports in the Southeast, in the southern region, particularly the Southeast, and why it doesn't seem to be profitable. Because when you talk about the economy of sports, there is massive money, huge potential there, but the potential is only available to those who have eyes to see. Many are blinded to the true nature or the true wealth that is in sports. That's why, like you're looking at the Southeast, not too long ago, the National Sports Festival ended. It's no coincidence. We saw the performance of the Southeastern states. Not one single Southeastern state made it to the top 10.
But ironically, the powerhouses of National Sports Festivals are the South states.
Yes.
But they too equally have this football rot. Yes. Despite they also producing great players.
Yeah.
You know, we see in particular Delta State, which seems to be a festival powerhouse.
Yes.
Which also gave us Stephen Keshi, Sunday Olise, JJ Okocha. And then you're seeing that, where's Warri Wolves?
just trying to get back into the MPFL through the Super 8.
And that brings me to my next question. If we look at a lot of the teams, in the Southeast, when you talk of private ownership, back in the day, Chief Manuel Iwayawu,
yes,
Iwayawu National, Gabros,
eventually Ifeanyi Ubah from Gabros.
Yeah, and Ifeanyi Ubah did, till he passed away recently, if we're to be fair, did keep that club running at great personal expense.
Yes.
Investing heavily in it. But then we look at the fact that a lot of the clubs are government owned. Yeah. We look at the fact that the Southwest is moving to more. We're seeing Akwa United, Lagos. A lot of private clubs are creeping in the Southwest. We've seen Shooting Stars, the battle between the Shooting Stars board and the Oyo State government. You know, we don't know what's going there. We know Sunshine Akure government owned, Canopilas government owned, the other government owned. So there are two arguments here. Is government good or government bad? The argument for, you know, private ownership, we look at Remo Stars. Shoname has quietly built a proper footballing institution. Yes. It helps that he has another club in Portugal. You know, it helps that, you know, Remo Stars is not his primary source of income, but he has invested so much. They've been a top 3, top 5 side for a while, and they very dominantly, almost I dare say, cruise to the title last season. And now we are seeing them already preparing to take on the continent. That's the argument for private ownership. The argument for public ownership is, we saw Rangers the season before. Peter Mbah's government came in, gave Amobi a mandate, gave him what he needed. You know, they allowed them to go private, do their branding. AfriInvest came on board. Everything was, you know, properly branded, properly done. I was there for the unveiling of the jerseys and everything. And, you know, I just started smiling because as a member of Swan, going back, I remember you would see the unveiling of a new player at a club. And the club GM will be wearing a Chelsea jersey. And the coach will be wearing maybe a Galatasaray jersey that a Super Eagle gave him. At the unveiling of a player of the club, they are the GM and the coach. So there was no sense of branding. It was madness. And, you know, so but this wouldn't care because we're government appointees. But then we saw what Rangers did, government owned. We saw the 2 years of continental dominance at Enyimba Football Club when Ojus Okalu invested. So we've seen that government ownership is not necessarily a problem. It's just unstable because it depends on the government's attitude towards the club. So my question now is, what do you think is the best way for us to spur, you know, business of football regionally very quickly? Do we go government or do we go private?
You know, funnily enough, that is a very, very difficult question to answer because it's not as straightforward as it sounds. Because the argument for government involvement, I don't want to use the word interference because basically there's an interference, for those who are not aware, an interference and an intervention are two different things. They're both interruptions. Yes. But one is a positive interruption, that's intervention to make things better, to improve them, while an interference is a negative interruption to make things worse than they already are. And the government, you look at the pros and the cons of government involvement and then private-owned businesses. Of course, a private-owned business is run with a capitalist mindset. Mostly. That's why you see Shoname, for instance, he is a capitalist, a pure capitalist. He's done a fantastic job with Remo Stars. He's building a brand, in fact, an empire. They say an empire.
In fact, the feeder club, Future Stars, has become a team in the NL, and it's coming up.
Yes, so you're looking at Future Stars in the NLO, you're looking at Beyond Limits in the NNL. So there's just a systematic plan for dominance. And and still, when you talk about that issue of dominance, I think that's one of the key differences between sports run in the Southeast and sports run.
Sorry, I meant Beyond Limits, not Future Stars. Sorry.
Okay, so but Beyond Limits, that's in the NNL.
Yes. They were in the NLO before. They are now.
They moved to the NNL.
They've been promoted.
Yes.
And they were Remo Academy.
Yes.
Because I know when they started.
Yes.
In fact, funny story. Their coach Olumide actually came from my academy.
Oh, yeah.
So I actually know where they started, and seeing the development is ridiculous in such a short time. You know,
it's ridiculous but intentional, because you know, like I always say, Rome was not built in a day, but it was built daily. So once you have a plan and then you do that every single day, every effort is geared towards the end game. And that's what these guys are doing. That's what some of these privately owned sites are doing. Yeah. But you know, it's down to pros and cons. The privately owned sites have their own pros, and that's the vision. They're vision oriented. They push and they want to get things done. But the cons, sometimes the cons outweigh the pros, which is why we've seen in the MPFL, for instance, no privately owned side had won the MPFL since Julius Berger in 2000, 25 long years before the Monsters came up and did that. Why? Because normally it's quite unfortunate that in this part of the world, the powers that be, if I may use that term, the powers that be make the environment not conducive at all.
Let's go into the spade. The state government pay referees. We saw match fixing. Look. Unabated match fixing.
Yes.
You know, and credit to SuperSport when they came and they were showing the matches on TV. We started seeing things change. You know, the Canopilas dominance ended.
Because of visibility. All eyes on them.
You know, and I will call out people.
Yes.
We saw what happened at Sunshine Stars in Akure. They would use a mighty refuse truck to block the Obi van from coming in. You know, I remember for games like Beiro saying we have not been winning matches since you were showing us on TV. You know, but we saw what happened. And then again, due to sports marketing and government greed, we don't have that visibility of the MPFL again. Yes. Do you think that maybe it's time, maybe we start having regional tournaments?
Regional tournaments, that's a good way to go about it. That's a good way to start. You know, when we have regional tournaments, because one of the major reasons for regional tournaments is to showcase the wealth and abilities of each region. Let each region develop at its own pace. If that region, let's say for instance the southern region, southwest, south-south, southeast, we then look at that almost like the structure in the in the NNL, like the Super 8. You have the Conference A, Conference B, Conference C, Conference D. You're picking up the best from the southern region and then the best from the northern region that get promoted for not just for federal character, but for fairness and equity. But it will be fantastic to see that happen. But still down to this issue of the government, the power brokers, the shareholders, everybody that's involved in what's happening behind the scenes. Back there, up there in the north, for instance, it's seen these football clubs. You mentioned some of them, like Canopila, they've been a powerhouse in the north for so long. You're looking at different sides, Academy Warriors,
Academy Warriors.
Yes. These are sides that are used as a platform to, portray dominance, power play, more or less. Yes, we have power. We want to show you that we have power across board, and our sports sector should be part of that. It's quite unfortunate, that can't be fully translated in other parts of sports, other sports. That's why you see dismal performances from the north. No disrespect to the north, but dismal performance from the north in like the National Sports Festival we're talking about. But because you talk about naturally talented athletes, most of them come from the southern region
but you look at the north. The north has given us its share of great footballers. It's all, I mean, Ahmed Musa comes to mind quickly. We have Mr. Garba. We have Rabiu Ali, probably the most legendary figure to play in the MPFL ever. We've not had, but the issue has always been that. And even when we're talking about it, I watch marathons in Nigeria, and you always see that the top Nigerians always come from the north, particularly the northeast. The top Nigerians. So where are these guys at the sports festivals? Where are our northern clubs on the tournament? At the tournaments, Academy Warriors used to be a very fearsome team. True. Canopilas had their reign of dominance. We talked about. There's Plateau United. We had Jutes back in the days. Where is BCC Lions of Boko? The middle belt where and BCC then I guess was because private owned.
Yes.
But I want to bring up a little conspiracy theory. Not really conspiracy theory, but a question. I always feel that there were 3 men who killed Nigerian football, and they killed it with goodwill, because the road to hell is paved with good intentions. I believe that Leventis United, Masters, Chief Manuel Wayawu, MQ Abiola, if they had treated their football clubs the way they treated their businesses, not as philanthropic gestures, but as actual businesses.
Yes.
and appointed CEOs the way they had for their businesses.
Yes.
If they had sat down and made themselves the first board of the Nigerian Professional League, I think our football will be superior to South Africa's own by now, our local league. I think what happened was it was philanthropy.
Yes.
It was goodwill. It was keeping people happy. Football has more been social than economic in Nigeria. Yes. But that's my own theory. I think that's where we lost it.
Yes, and I think I agree with you totally, because, like, for instance, you talk about business development. We have many businessmen who are philanthropists. They are very altruistic, and they run NGOs, non-governmental organizations. Now, your NGO is not your business. Your NGO is funded by your business. So if your football club, a football outfit, sporting outfit generally, is seen like an NGO, like a philanthropic platform, it will die off like an NGO if it's not being funded, if it's not internally, if there's yes, exactly. There's no internal generation of funds that sustains it. That's self-sustainable. That's the term I wanted to use. So I will agree. Yes, they played a part to do that. They did it with good intentions. They didn't understand the dynamism of sports. I would say, in fairness to them, that even though they were businessmen, because not all businessmen know everything, they probably didn't see how much of a gold mine the sporting sector is. And if they had, we'll be having a different conversation right now. But at the end of the day, it's still down to who's at the helm and who helps matters, because the potential is so vast. Look at the National Sports Festival we talked about, and then look at the state of things in the Southeast. I'm just centering on the Southeast for now. Ebonyi State doesn't have any footballing team, any football team in the MPFL. There is no stadium that I know of in Ebonyi State that meets the standard for that. And then you could even be outside of football in the National Sports Festival. Ebonyi State ranked 28th. Now Enugu didn't rank too much higher, which is an indictment, and really it's a good thing that the LOC has been appointed now. They inaugurated the 10-man LOC with Mary Onyali Obamimi in there, Dave Snowumi, Barrister Lloyd Ekweremadu, and then many others who are there. Big, solid brains who at least try and fix this rot in their own way, as long as they're given the room. And I have confidence in His Excellency, the Executive Governor of Enugu State, Dr.
I mean, when I see all these 10-man committee, 2-man committees, I can tell you Lagos and Delta's secrets very easily.
Yes, please spell it out.
Keep people consistently on a payroll with a stipend, so that whatever they are doing, as long as they have where they are staying, what they are eating, money to spend, sustain, they have training equipment, they have training facilities, they will spend 80% of their time training, because you put them in a semi-professional state constantly. But when people have their jobs and train once a week, and you want them to come to a festival, even those that are committed to athletics, that they have a job, they train, go to work, come back, but they don't even have food to eat.
You're just leading me to the last point I wanted to raise.
That consistency.
Yes.
Lagos, Delta, Rivers, they've done it. Delta and Lagos in particular.
Yes.
Edo is another state that, for some sports, has kept that. And let's give credit. We knock where we knock, but let's give credit where credit is due.
Yes.
The current DG of the National Institute for Sports, Philip Shuaibu, as Deputy Governor of Edo State, was very, very important in the structure of Edo State sports.
True.
So maybe I hope as is there at NIS, when we come for coaching badges, they won't tell us that they can't see us because they're looking for who wants to rent hall. I mean, true story. So do we need all this 10-man committee? Can't we just be consistent?
No, I think the part of yes, we should be consistent. That's all part of that. Now we should be consistent, and we'll be consistent if it's a priority. It's down to that issue of priorities, and then creating an enabling environment and providing the resources. In fact, if you must use a carrot and stick approach, because incentivizing, your performance, incentivizing sports generally, bringing massive remunerations for these players will motivate them. Many of these players, many of these athletes do not have motivation. They see that they are maybe just a mere option. And if you treat me, I'm just echoing the sentiments of many of them. If you treat me like an option, I cannot make it a priority. So naturally, you're not going to get the best out of me. So if they do that intentionally and then have the right heads in the committee, because they say 2 heads are better than 1. Well, not exactly true. 2 good heads are better than 1. So when you have good people who understand sports.
I'm going to say if that was true. Explain our National Assembly. But go on.
Yeah, but still down to that issue. When you have viable, upwardly mobile people who understand sports. That's why, for instance, I'm optimistic. Even though the performance of Enugu in the National Sports Festival, the Gateway Games, was left to be desired, finishing 23rd, with just 1 gold medal, and then the whole Southeast won 19 medals in total. That was very appalling. And then, Imo State have been the only consistent Southeastern state to finish in the top 10 in the last 3 national sports festivals. But that aside, looking at those names, you're looking at Dave Snowumi, you're looking at Miri Onyale Omabemi, you're looking at Barrister Lloyd Ekweremadu, who also has some visions concerning sport development. I've seen that, I've met him, we've talked, and we've seen what he brings to the table. And then, I've forgotten her name. Stella, it's her son, the badminton lady who performed who represented Nigeria in badminton. I had the pleasure of interviewing her I think a couple of years ago. So you're looking at people who understand the problem and who know how to solve the problem. And if they're given the resources, then they will make a solid environment that will carry everybody along and then make people know, hey, there is so much to gain from sports.
Let me ask one final question because we're out of time.
Okay.
Should we be bringing sports people to solve sports problems, or should we be bringing business people? Is our problem sporting or business problems?
A combination
particularly for football
a combination
in Nigeria.
It's a combination of both, and I still firmly insist on that. A business person who understands sports, or a sports person who's into business. Somebody who, because naturally business has different templates. There are basic rules that are involved in running business, but there are peculiarities depending on the kind of business you're running. Sports business requires sports acumen. So I need to have sports people who are also into business, and I think that's the way forward.
Well, that's a good way to leave it. That is the way forward, and that's all we can take. But thank you so much for being here. Of course, you can catch him every morning 7:30 on Afia 993 FM if you're in Enugu. If you're not, bumper package Saturday morning 10:30 a.m. Afia Weekend Sports Show. It's I would call it the Afia Sports Show #ASS. You can catch them at 10:30 every Saturday morning. You don't want to miss that, trust me. GSTV 254, GoTV 17, Free TV 748. But the Eastern Business Report, Afia Business Morning, not fully done yet. Eastern Business is done. Afia Business Morning is not, because Ifunaya Ndule Market Pekin is ready to walk you into the market, how market comes up right now. So stay tuned to 254 on DSTV, 17 on GoTV, and of course 748 on Free TV. Till I see you at 10 a.m. tomorrow for another edition of the Afia Business Morning, I'm Nnamdi Obanya saying have a very profitable business day.